Hey everybody, welcome back. It's your Uncle Jeff with InnRoads new series RPG Jam Sessions, and I am joined by my good friend Brian, the erstwhile new GM, to join the fold of creative thinkers. I guess we can call ourselves creative thinkers, right?
So,
Yeah. How you doing, Brian? How's it going?
doing good. Enjoying gaming this week and jam-packed week. Got a game on Sunday, another one coming up next week, and one on Thursday. Talking games tonight. Told my wife this is like the dream come true. Playing games and talking about playing games.
You've entered the Nexus. Right?
Yeah.
It's not the Matrix because it's copyright infringement, but the Nexus I think we can use. That should be okay. It should be safe. So you know what? We're picking up where we left off last week. This is basically the beginning of this series is about the journey of a new game master, i.e., Brian. This is how he's started to learn the ropes. He's picked up a lot of skills along the way. We already heard last episode how advanced he is, so we're going to move him to the intermediate challenge this week, which is a mouthy Jawa. So we'll see how that played out here in just a moment. So there was something that we didn't quite cover last session. You know, we were trying to make sure that we keep these episodes relatively short. But there was something that came up during the game last time that I think is kind of cool. I don't think a lot of folks, especially those who are in the tavern and kind of, you know, they know where I'm coming from and they know where you're coming from when it comes to our faith. What transpired and when did it happen during the session?
Well, I was just one of the ones I had talked about. I just in sort of being a GM and realizing I'm getting to run the game and particularly a game for coming out of the tavern. I just thought, well, if this is something I'm really going to be doing, and these are people that I'm interacting with and relating to, that it was just an opportunity for, at least for me, to I don't know if it was part of the sort of the idea of I'm the GM, so I'm sort of creating this culture, but I decided that I wanted to make it a priority to just pray for the players in my game, and so kind of asked them. It was actually the day after. I mean, so many things I forgot to ask at the end of my session.
What was your character's name?
Who is that? How? Oh yeah, XP, and oh yeah, and all that sort of stuff. And so it was actually the day after, and but just sent him a message and asked how I could be praying for him, and it ended up being some good conversation, and it just helped us. And you got my cats over here in the corner fighting.
One game at a time. One game at a time, right? Roll your own game, kitty. Later.
Come on, the dog's being quiet.
Yeah.
So, it just was something I decided that if I'm going to GM games, I think that's something I wanted to be just a part of how I do it. And, so yeah, we had a good conversation. Then we started off the session, the second session, just, hey, how's it going? And the things we had been talking about and it prayed for and things like that. And so it was just an opportunity, especially I think, coming from sort of that tavern and InnRoads, the idea of our faith is not separate from playing the games.
Right.
And so if that's something that's important, then, how do I get that in? And it was perfectly natural. And,
it's a component of all of our games, I think, in so much that as a game master, you get invested in your players a little bit more than say a player would be. Hey, I'm going to worry about my character. I'm going to worry about this. But as a GM, your job is to kind of get up in their business, right?
Yeah.
And so it's an excellent time to really tune into them as people. Obviously, they're people behind these characters. These characters are sometimes, a part of them. However crazy the half-orc barbarian is as he's waving his axe, that may be a large part or a small part of the project manager that's, going to work every day and, wants to have some excitement in their life, that sort of thing. But getting into the reality of each person's lives, hey, how are things going? How's that? How's the Thanksgiving going? I know you told me there would be some family tension, that sort of thing. How did that go? Is there any chance that I could think about you? I could pray about you. And it's a big part of the reason I love the tavern so much, and I love being part of this ministry, is that it's a continual proof in my life that it doesn't have to be separate. And in fact, it's actually enhanced my gaming experience because I'm more attuned to the players around the table. And it sounds like that's been your experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things that I think originally sort of drew me into the tavern was the community and the gaming and the faith. But then once I got, what kept me there was that it seems to be more of a genuine interaction than a lot of other spaces, online where, you might be chatting back and forth, but you sort of get the sense that, even though people are vast distances, some of these interactions they're a little bit deeper. And so I'll just say, hey, because I look at like you said, the sort of looking at the player, not just that for the PC gets good experiences, but sort of looking at the whole player, because your job's to make sure they have a good time while they're playing. Not just that they succeed at the mission, but or whatever it is. And I come from a teaching background, and so it was pretty natural for me to consider. We called it pastoral care. It was the idea of, they're supposed to be learning or doing whatever, but they are a person, and that you can't pull those apart and expect them to be succeeding in one thing and not the other. So the game can help you enjoy the rest of life, but if you can help care for the rest of life, hopefully they enjoy the game more. And
for sure,
the camaraderie is what makes it. And so
you're going to be more willing to be involved with that person when you know that they're wanting to be involved with you.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I gotta say, man, again, at the intermediate level, with our friend Brian here, learning that investing in the people around your table makes your game exponentially more enjoyable. And I'll definitely second the remarks about the tavern, how you become a little bit closer to the folks there because of the nature and the tenor and the tempo and the tone of this place, of this group in Facebook. I find that it's so much easier to tell myself I'm going to run a one-shot, and then it turns into something else, right? Because, that's what's going to be happening Thursday, is we're going to have a game that's supposed to have been a one-shot.
Part 2 of the one-shot?
Yeah, part 2 of the one-shot. And I have a lot of part 2s out there, part 3s and part 4s. But it's hard to say no when you start getting involved with the people here and learning about them and how creative and just how wonderfully beautiful everybody is here. And it's just and everywhere, I should say, it just seems that it's a little bit easier to share, that sort of thing. But the game itself, we're on session 2 now, right? So we're recording this 2 days after you ran your session. And I want to say that after your first session, you kind of already knew the types of players that you were with. You knew that going into the game, I should say, especially one mouthy Jawa, Marxist. The kinds of random things that players like that can toss into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about tangents, tangent prep.
Yeah.
So what's something that you're finding is helping you out with these crazy circus animals you have in your game?
Yeah, that was it. Coming out of that first session, like I said, I was like, oh man, I know where they need to go and I know where they are, but how they're going to bridge that gap. The session 2 was the big question mark for me. And how do you deal with that? So, there was a lot of, I would say for me, I kind of approached it from thinking about what they had done, trying to think about who that character was and going, what might they try? What are they going to think? What might they try to pull off? Like they had split. And so one of them was going to do some reconnaissance. And luckily I had already kind of, I had thought some of the other tangents they might go down would get them information about the base. So at that one, I was like, oh, no problem. He can just see some of those things. And and actually firsthand experience some of those things that they might have learned in other ways. So that one I did okay because I had sort of done some back prep. But it was the other ones I wasn't quite sure how were they going to play this social interaction? Were they going to try to sort of recruit these? There was a group of people that they're interacting with, and how that was going to happen. And actually, my bigger fear. So there was the tangent, but I was actually also afraid that it was going to be really flat and just go in, ask for help, yes, boom, boom, and go on. And well, that's not going to be an exciting session for anybody if that's all we do. So actually, I prepared a tangent of my own, I would say, and that was
nice.
Was thinking about these NPCs and these beast riders, and sort of live out in the jungles. They don't really interact. Sort of reclusive, and so I kind of played them like that they had this real strict code of honor that was sort of warrior based, and the two players that were going was this commander and then this sabotagey little mouthy Jawa, and I kind of figured that they weren't going to really like the Jawa and that he was going to drive them bonkers, and so I sort of tried to. So I had this scenario plan that if something exciting didn't happen for them, that they were going to call them out. The NPCs were going to throw down this challenge and see if they step up to it. And I think against their better judgment, the Jawa decided that yes, he would essentially go into a cage match with a giant beast with just a knife.
Yeah. This is the oft confused, not Canadian Cannok, but Star Wars Cannok.
Yeah, the Star Wars Cannok with the Cannok. And went in there, almost blew himself up trying to sneak a grenade in to the fight of honor. I wasn't sure how he was going to use it. It probably was a good thing for him that it blew up before he went in. Went toe to toe with the Cannok and probably missed 10 times in a row, and defeated the beast when the beast tripped onto his knife, essentially, is how it went down. It was the beast lunged, knocked him over. The Jawa fell down and lost his knife, which just happened to fly right into the eye. And took it out. It was this epic misfest, back and forth and back and forth. But they both were close, and it was just, you couldn't have planned for it, and it'll end up being the thing we probably talk about.
Well, I counter that by saying that you did plan for it.
Well, I did
exactly that.
I can't set them up.
And this is the great thing too, is that as a game master, you can start looking at your story. So if you're using a pre-written adventure, similar to what you're doing with your Star Wars adventure, is that obviously first things first, kids, read the adventure once, maybe twice, take some notes. In the past, I've even drawn out a little timeline and have like little hash marks that says this is going to happen here and this is going to happen here. Yeah, and then I can have like a parallel line where you guys go crazy and you're going to go off in different directions, and that's fine. That's a little note thing that I can do on the side. But the thing is that by knowing your story, you're going to know where the flat positions can be, where things are going to be. If they roll well, which in Star Wars is a potentiality, maybe they roll flat. They don't have any triumphs or anything. It's just successes, plain old successes, no advantages. And here the thing you're looking for is over here. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. Here's some money, blah, blah, blah. Make sure that you have something in reserve for those quiet times. Because sometimes you'll watch your players and you'll see that they're kind of not so much drifting, but they're thinking, okay, when's the next shoe going to drop? And if you don't have another shoe ready to throw at them, then it becomes a little boring for the players. So it's always good to have something like that and know your environment. All of the beats that I'm talking about here are things that you already are doing, which is know the story, know the environment. You're thinking about the NPCs, what they can do. So it's something that I learned along the way is that I like to write a lot, and I don't mean that I write well. I like to write a lot. So I verbose, too many words. As I talk, you get this. The trick that I've been doing is I'm always cutting by a third everything that I write I cut by a third. And then I've even done that for my NPCs, because then if I write too much, I forget what my NPCs are about. So I'll have little motivations that I'll put in there so that I know who they are. And it sounds kind of like what you did. You're looking at them as these are, a savage kind of tribal group, and how are they going to respond when they're very proud people to somebody who is very self-proud, self-righteous, and saying, this is how things are going to be. I'm curious, did they speak the same language? Did you?
Yeah, we went ahead and they spoke some common or whatever.
Right. So kind of like a broken.
They were able to converse with them. So that wasn't I didn't want to throw that one in there.
That'd be kind of a too big of a curveball, at least unless you're having a super long campaign, and then that can be kind of fun as you're trying to learn to communicate. But no, that's good. That's really good. The again, just knowing that story, knowing your NPCs, and then you can just maneuver things around. There's going to be instances where they're going to break things in your game. It's just what players do, because they aren't inside your head. The story you're trying to tell is always an iceberg. There's always so much more below the surface that they don't see. So, you can't blame them for derailing a game here and there. Although sometimes you can, because you see their faces and they're like... and you know that they're just out to ruin your night. But that's when you have these little options. You can shift things around. Think of them as kind of like a modular set piece. So if they miss one thing here, you can shift that around, put it somewhere else, and use it there.
Yeah, that worked out well for me in my plan. I had a little bit of a map, like that. Maybe not choose your own adventure, but the idea that you could get the same piece of information, key information, going in 2 or 3 different ways. There wasn't you have to go here to get it. And I had built that into my backstory for how they could get the recon and the things they needed to make the assault purposely in 2 to 3 ways, which that then made it really easy to deal with however they chose to go about it, because I'd go, oh, I didn't anticipate that, but I can give you that thing just as easily over here that I was going to give you over there. And then the nice one about Star Wars is they threw me for a loop on one. They got into a computer, and I wanted them to essentially find some base plans or something. Their role was amazing. They're like, oh, and I found all this this encrypted data, the data, and I'm like, yeah, and it's encrypted, and they're like, and it will take a daunting check to decrypt it. And you can try once a day. Like, I went ahead and I was like, oh man, I'm like, I don't know what. I hope my players. Sorry if you guys are watching. I don't know what's in that data quite yet. I got to figure that out.
Spoiler alert! Whoa.
Oh, no spoiler yet, but I'm still trying to figure out what you actually have. Luckily, in the timeline, I don't think it was mission critical, but it's actually this really cool plot point that if it was to carry on into the future, and they actually end up cracking this, it could be a whole seed for another mission or something like that.
And you can have them put things into the box of mystery, just as well as you are, because they're giving you ammunition over and over and over again. So
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So tangents. So it sounds like you've got a good prep method in place to handle those quiet moments, but also kind of have something that can get out ahead of them if need be, to give them that challenge. And that stems really well from our last episode when we were talking about, as a first session and a first-time GM, a great way to go is kind of that heist model, where you have a target you need to go to, a mission-critical thing that you need to do, and you just have multiple ways to get there. But you always know that funnel is going to work. It's going to get you where you need to go.
Getting closer and closer. And
For sure. So, I mean, instead of looking at 5 different planets, they've finally narrowed it down to they need to be on one planet, and then they're going to narrow it down to they need to be in one city. Just kind of that model.
Yeah.
So with your game, you're running it on Roll20, right?
Yes.
You're doing that now. So how are you? It's kind of a different dynamic. So this is kind of you had one game, a small game of Star Wars where you had it live, right? So it was around the table with your family, and then now you're doing it in a digital realm with with different people, obviously. So if you were to compare the two, do you feel that not that's necessarily one's better than the other, but is there some advantages or disadvantages that you have? Haha, D&D 5e. There's some advantages and disadvantages to being in the digital realm.
Well, actually, the one thing about the digital world with this system is that the Star Wars system itself is supposed to be sort of that theater of the mind style.
Right.
It's set up that way. It doesn't even have mechanics for movement other than you're kind of close to, you're really close, or you're kind of far away to,
right.
so that it doesn't have that sort of mechanic. So it is more imagining and things like that. So the nice thing about Roll20, at least, is I've just been using, instead of maps, I've been using almost like cutscene art. Nice. To evoke various different feels for the sort of, I just had a picture of a city, you're in the city somewhere. A jungle picture, you're in the jungle. Anytime we're talking about moving through the jungle, there's the same image, but it kind of gave everybody that same, hopefully a starting point for like the type of jungle we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And so those sort of cutscenes were nice, though we're now moving towards the assault, where there actually is a base map that comes with the game. So, we're actually now moving to almost that dungeon crawl style, and that it's going to change the flavor. And I think what I'm going to have to do is I have to work to try and keep that theater of the mind, rather than just I move my guy here, I move him there.
Right.
And so I'm starting to, I'm making sure I'm reminding myself that it's rather than just, oh, look, you can see more of the map, to actually describe from, point of view descriptions. Look, you can, not just here's a hallway. This is what this hallway looks like.
What it feels like, the smells and stuff.
The sound, flickering. Oh, you see access panels here and there, and that sort of a thing.
That's great. That's great. I've done kind of similar things with that platform and other platforms where you can kind of draw the map as you go. So like you can just do stick figures. This bar right here is a wall. This right here is higher than you. That sort of thing.
Out rooms and
So if you want to keep that frame of mind, that theater of the mind going, then like you're doing, just kind of have a minimalist approach to it. And that's not really any very different than what you would do at the table. Maybe at the table you grab a couple of books and like all of a sudden these two books stacked up are a building, and then this die right here is your character, and we're going to move that through. So
so that's been good. I'm excited to move to the map style as well. I do want to see how that plays out a little bit different,
right.
And let them get a little more tactical. And things like that, and but that was one of the big reasons that I wanted the social interactions first. I want them to have now a dynamic in the group, and sort of knowing who their PCs are and how they approach it, and and then the nice thing is, again, I know some things that'll happen, and I got an idea of the order they'll happen in. But if things are going slow, things could happen sooner or quick, so, if they just start poking around and they want to explore the kitchen, well, maybe I might let them. We'll see. And
here's a counter, and then there's a butcher knife right there. Leave the butcher knife alone. And I've really enjoyed having that ability to just kind of do an ad hoc map, or if you wanted to pop in a picture, you can do that. It's kind of learning the feel of those tools, whether it's in the live space or in a digital space, to try and balance that out. The ability to actually see players, back and forth is fantastic, so that way you can at least get a vibe of what they're doing and what their faces are, their facial cues are. You're like, oh my gosh, what the heck just happened? I just stabbed the Cannok. What? But the one thing that I've kind of, I see, there's two ways that I look at action pieces, or like using maps and that sort of thing. Is that sometimes I like to start, and I'll credit TR Knight, one of our regulars, with this information, is that I dabbled in it a little bit, but then he started kind of stressing how it's really nice to start off in the middle of things, in medias res, and it's something it's been pretty popular with games of late that I've seen online. The idea that we start off with you crashing through a third-story window and landing into a plaza below somehow, and then there's blaster fire coming out from behind you. But there's also that the method of mixing not just the action set piece when you start that way, but also with a social set piece. You start off, and maybe we start with that savage encounter with that tribe. You're sitting across the way from a being that looks like a green skin with no nose and is looking at you. He's got a spear pointing at your throat, and he just asked you, do you want to live or die? What do you say? And that's how we start the game, right? So there's a bunch of schools of thought when it comes to how to start off a campaign or start off a one shot. And I think that if you're feeling solid in the medium that you're using, whether it is live or it's a Roll20 or a Fantasy Grounds or whatever, make sure that you feel comfortable with that so that you can flow with the decision that you make, because the players will kind of tell you if they're enjoying how it starts, right? You can kind of get that feeling. So
absolutely.
Well, great. Any other lasting impressions from session 2 that you feel you want to jump out there?
No, I mean, I think I was a little nervous after the first session. Wasn't sure, how it was going, but after the second session, I was just like, oh, we're having fun, and things are going well, and they're pulling out great ideas, and and it's great. Like I sort of knew a lot of these things that I thought they might try to accomplish, because I'm seeing the whole thing from that bird's eye view of like, oh man, they're going to have to do these big things in sort of a few of these things before they do this other thing. And that's all great. But then when you actually get into it and you play it with them, you forget that when I zoom back down in on the game, I don't know how they're going to do it. And the ways that they're coming up with creatively doing these things, like, oh wow, wouldn't have thought of that. That's awesome. You can do that, and boy, that's going to give you. And I'm writing down, boy, you're going to be getting a boost on that later on, and just getting to see all the little ripples that are happening, and seeing it living almost, and seeing that story come alive, was just very, very exciting. It was fun. I kind of. I went to bed and told my wife, I was like, that was so much fun. I was just, it was great. I was like, oh, so as any good game is, but, getting to see the game that, having allowed them to create that experience was fun.
Yeah. It's a different perspective, right? It's
a different
perspective, when they're having fun off of something that, might be a little smidgen of the world that you're putting together, and they're having fun with it. Oh my gosh, it's a wonderful feeling. It really is. And it even balances against the times when you feel like your game might be falling flat, that sort of thing. Because if you're staying connected with your players, don't worry. You'll have sessions like that. Just chat with them and say, hey, I noticed that, the last hour and a half kind of dragged along, and then they tell you it was actually 30 minutes. Oh. So it really dragged. What are some things that you might be looking for in adventures? So don't hesitate to ask. There's going to be times, just as what you're talking about, Brian, where it just feels great. It's going right. Things are hot. You go to bed and you're thinking, man, that was freaking awesome. So grab hold of those times and then learn from the times when it may not be as freaking awesome as that. So I think, for next time, I wanted to let's chat a little bit about some specific tools that we can use as game masters that can help us with some prep, not just for tangents, but for also on the fly stuff that might happen. So we can talk a little bit about that, and then I'm really eager to find out how the next session goes. This is fun for me to hear. This is really fun for me to hear. So
I'm excited to see. I'm not sure are they going to go in sneaky and casual, or they might go in and kick the front door down and just start unloading on the base. So we'll see what happens.
Throw the Jawa at the door.
Oh man, but it's great because two of their duties in the game are sabotage, and the third duty is combat victory. So this is where they're really going to get to shine, and they've been prepping, and they got some good explosives lined up for themselves, and well, it could. Who knows?
Nothing says fun like your players saying, "I've got a lot of explosives." Okay, let's go.
Hey, we got those extra speeder bike cores we can blow up now. I'm like, oh boy, well, here we go.
Here we go.
Let's see what happens.
And on that thermal detonator, we'll go ahead and bring this episode to a close. As always, it's super great to have y'all here. It's a new kind of experiment for InnRoads to try and put something together for new game masters and even game masters looking to refine their trade. There's a lot of information out there, so if you're stopping by and tuning in, we really appreciate it. If you hear about us on YouTube, give us a like. Let us know what you liked about it. If you don't like it, let us know what you don't like about it so we can figure out how to fine-tune this show a little bit for you. And if you see us out on the Twitterverse posting about our episodes, give us a retweet. You can follow me at GSP Keegan, so that's GSP KHEEGAN. And of course, you can always follow us at InnRoads, and that's at INNROADS. And then find out more about InnRoads at InnRoadsMinistries.com. Brian, did you want to share anything as far as last minute advice or last minute?
Oh boy. No, I think I got most everything I had there, and
all right, fantastic. So
yeah,
there you go. There you go. All right, gang. Thanks a lot for stopping by. We will see you next week. Keep rolling dice, have fun, invest in those friendships around the table. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.